Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful, empowered harmonizers. We are zooming in and focusing in on a great viewer question, and that is to go into a little bit more in depth on the manipulation tactics of the female psychopath and really what to be careful of. One of the problems of the female psychopath really becomes that of one of domination over their prey, over their target, over the individual with whom they are honing in on or focusing in on with their mind, with their time to get something that they need, that they feel is of value. And one of the tactics, the manipulation tactics, is that of one of hyper arousal, where they really sort of seek this dominance really through ulterior motives that are really aimed at your subconscious and oftentimes don't get filtered out by your conscious mind. So you don't realize the setting up and the deliberate tracks that are being laid where you're sort of being reinforced on a cycle, where you really become reinforced by applying your focus to their needs and their needs to the deprivation of your own. So there is not a symbiotic relationship. You'll find that as you proceed in a relationship, as you develop or go along the path in a relationship with a female psychopath, and I use air quotes because it really becomes more of an experience rather than a relationship. It's something that you can just feel. It's something that you just know. It's something that you have, in the privacy of your heart between you and your Savior, between you and the divine, but between you and whatever you feel your God is. If you're to really just hone in on that feeling, oftentimes there is a gut feeling that there is something awry, that there's something wrong, but oftentimes you feel too ashamed to admit it. It's too big to admit. It could cause too many life changes. It could be too shocking. It could be devastating. It could be overwhelming. It could be overbearing. So people then, men, if you're in a relationship, then choose to sort of push it down. Just be a man about it. Be generous with this female, meaning, not checking in with your needs, not checking in with your own boundaries and standards, and instead being dragged by this individual across those. There then becomes an experience of domination or dominance, and then subordination, or the one that you have to either become more docile, more appeasing, more pacifying to that female psychopath for them to continue their what becomes a programming, a way that they treat you, and to respond to the way, to them for their needs. So men become, they can become walked over. They can become blindsided. They can be shocked when, if they have let it gone and ignored the red flags for too long, which are the things that you say in your gut, I really should pay attention to this. But then you give, allowances or allotments to that individual because they're so attractive, or, there's this domination effect where you don't question it, or you're in an addiction. What that can be, then becomes a full-blown addiction, meaning, you can't have an I am that is separate and distinct from this individual. You don't feel you have the right. You don't feel you have the place. You don't feel you have the space. You are merged. You are experiencing a meshment and a trauma bond. This is not healthy. They will program you to feel that to be enmeshed is the healthy, and in the name of love, you should lose your boundaries. You should lose your I am. Ultimately, it becomes a focusing and a reckoning with them rather than yourself. So you become sort of immersed and then begin to dwell on only them and the relationship. Your world feels like it's getting very big, but it's actually getting very small. You don't realize sort of the relationship dynamics until you get perspective, or you begin to see that things aren't coming through in fruition. The the engagement, you're wondering what you should do, or you're in a marriage and you're wondering about divorce now, not just no contact, things have gotten serious. So the problem is that the individual, the female psychopath, is not going to have the same care, concern. They will have a mimicry, as if they will have a facade, as if you understand that. So for most men, though, they don't want to be in a relationship with a facade. They want to be in a relationship with the real deal. So the problem with the female psychopath then is they will then, tell you what you want to hear, or things that will limit you in your I am, to keep you under their thumb, under their control, under their dominion. And so for some men, once again, in the beginning, this can become a very welcome feeling, where they, no one has been attracted to them before, or their wife doesn't make them feel this way, or all of a sudden now that this woman makes them feel on top of the world. You feel such a man now. You've been able to provide for them. You've been able to, give them, trips, whatever it is, and then you find out that they're cheating, they've betrayed you, that they have a double or triple life. It can be very, very, not only mentally exhausting, but it can be really a lot to process and lead to kind of a shutdown, just like a computer crash, and how do you deal with that? The tactics to be careful of the female psychopath is to realize that hyper arousal is one to sort of break you down. So it's almost something that you have to recognize that it's stripping you down to not be able to resonate with your higher faculties, things like your intellectual process, getting back to your simplicity, getting back to your original I am and your values, because in the course of the relationship, you might have, negated a lot of your I am. You might have realized that a lot of that has been sacrificed or shaved down, where you no longer feel you have that, sort of comfort with yourself. You feel that you no longer have, I would just say almost you feel that you no longer have that rapport with yourself. You kind of lose a relationship with yourself, and it is severed basically by this relationship with a female psychopath who will hyper arouse to get you to disengage, oftentimes with those things that are of value to you. Whether it's your job, your finances, your relationships, your home, your pride, your legacy, your family, and they'll get you to sort of become hyper aroused and break you down so that they are you're filling your cup rather than you being able to fill the cup, or even having a full cup that you're bringing to the relationship, if that makes sense. And it gets depleted really without your knowing it, without your acknowledging it, because you feel that the giving is giving back to yourself. So the female psychopath in the hyperarousal, it'll often be a very triggered. It can either be triggering a lot of fear, anxiety, romantic feelings that get people hyper aroused, and your body then becomes really, it begins to become programmed, if you will, to an agitated state that can oftentimes lead people in a very, very wrong direction. They can't control it. They have visions of what this person is doing. They begin trying to find and follow them like clues to a mystery. They begin to worry and dwell. They can't stop thinking about it. They have ruminating thoughts. Believe me when I tell you that the female psychopath understands the impact that they have on others. They know, and it's deliberate, the hyper-arousal, getting you into that triggered and agitated state, riled up, not able to cool down, really in that delusion, what becomes then a delusion to the illusion of the hyper-arousal, which is oftentimes a fabrication and a lie, meaning they have no intention on delivering you the love. They have no intention on delivering to you the business partner. They have no intention on, on doing things right. They will corrupt and corrode, especially the I am of the men. The I am meaning that you no longer feel like yourself, or that yourself is engaged in the relationship, meaning you feel that you feel that you're being hollowed out, from the inside, and you did not recognize it. This is a result of the hyper arousal that the female psychopath will do, that will either feel like they're pushing you too much, they're rubbing you too much, they're calling you too much, they're texting you too much, it will become a hyper aroused state where you won't be able to tap into other states to dial it down, and you become then just sort of allowing them to take the helm and take control. So be able to pull the reins back, dial things down, cool their jets, cool your jets, know where your jets want to go, so you don't get fired up in the wrong direction. It is very easy. That is what the female psychopath does. And it's very important to get a grip and become to a neutral state, which is really becomes, and I would say suspending judgment, letting it go. Really, suspend judgment, which means let me stop labeling this. Let me stop labeling this relationship as good, as bad, as evil. Let me just come to a neutral and just begin to see it more clearly, because you're going to have to dial it down if you've become hyper aroused. You're going to need to resensitize yourself. I talk about that a lot in these videos. One thing, become very aware of an automatic process that the mind will go through, which is to enter into these sort of very repulsive, hyper aroused sort of, I would say, ruminating or intrusive thoughts, where you feel that your mind is just kind of on overdrive. You keep thinking about these strange things, or you have dreams, nightmares, visions. You're on hyper aroused state. This is what the female psychopath does. I can go more into this or give you more examples, but realize that it is to get you launched into a whole nother level of fear, trepidation, despair, not knowing where you stand, not knowing what direction, feeling beyond lost, more of a real feeling of violation, to the point where you can't recover a sensibility, and get some perspective. So that is known as hyper arousal. And I can go into this, but realize that this is sort of a hallmark or trademark aspect of the psychopath, female or male, is this hyper arousal. So the things that they do, their suggestiveness, the use of their body to do strange things. I mean, I can do a whole video on this if you like, but and realize that it's designed to entice, seduce, and destroy, not to build up, not to be there for you, not to be present, not to be engaging, not to be empathetic. They do it with no regret, no remorse. They know the impact that they're going to have, and they oftentimes will target those people who have a real need, who are needy at that time. They are, needing a business partner. They're needing a friend. They're very lonely. So these psychopaths can sniff them out like a dog, looking for a victim, or whatever it is that the dogs do. I mean, these people, bam. I mean, it's almost as if they have another sense that they can pick up on people by their body language, if they're down and out, if they have low confidence, low self-esteem. They really, you can study this too. Psychopaths will pick their victims out of a crowd. They'll see who to pick and why to pick them, and the approach. They become very skilled and adept. You have to understand that this hyperarousal is a skill. It is a trait that they then hone and develop like a skill. So if they're old, as they mature, they're going to have engaged in this and done this to several people, again and again. So, and they're going to continue. This is what they do. They blindside people emotionally to the extent that most people would be shocked, and just not believe that, a person would do this. this kind of behavior in the hyper arousal, when they thought that they were getting, that they were growing more in love, and this person had, ulterior plans, another person in the wings, two other people in the wings, another business in the plans, in the blueprint, plans to move, and you didn't know it, vacations that you didn't know about, business ventures that were done right underneath your nose while you were at dinner that you had no idea about, and they executed without any flinch or flailing, and doing things that set them up and get them hyper aroused. Things like, scheduling 2 dates at the same restaurant and fooling them both, meeting at the same vacation spot and, having, 2 different dates. I mean, we're talking for real crazy stuff like this where the psychopath is just, it's business as usual for them. And it does not change. One thing you have to embrace in this is that in life, many things change. Most things change, if not all things can change. So all things can change, and all things can change for the better for you, so that your love is restored, your heart is restored, your sensibility is restored. Excuse me. And your I am is restored. This can be very careful, very, very scary. You need to be able to calm down, detox, take a breather, and cease the pressure. Just stop and begin to really, do things that you understand that you are going to need to sort of, comb through and learn how to comb through and calm down and understand what hyperarousal is and its effects. I can do more videos on this, but it can be very alluring and addictive, meaning the people will do unsavory things to stay in a relationship or to entertain that agitation level, to keep it going, if you will, to keep the buzz going for them, to keep it becomes literally like an aroused state that they are on. It becomes like a roller coaster. It becomes like a ride. It becomes to them, they might feel that, pursuit of this female is like a fairy tale. It's like a dream. It's worth it. No one makes me feel like this. Well, you have to be careful because this is a process. And, you might have to ask yourself, to what degree do you want to, engage in more loss, until that you, and maybe ask yourself, do you really want the real thing? And then get some relief and some recognition that what is not the real thing and what is the real thing. And get some things down to simplistics for yourself. What was, too much and what was just enough? What is the real thing and what is not the real thing? Begin to engage in these very simple conversations in the privacy of this video, so you can admit to yourself, and sort of, because this individual is not going to come clean, they're going to perpetuate the same thing. They're not going to learn. They will falsify and become more pathological liars. But that hyper arousal is to keep you blind. It's to keep you so aroused that you can't see what's going on. It's just as if, someone who drank too much coffee all the time didn't realize the value of being content. So it's very important that you see that there's a very specific connection, that the hyper arousal is meant to sort of get you off your off base, to give you a consolation, if you will, a consolation prize, a consolation feeling, not a real relationship. That hyper arousal is to get you agitated to the point where you don't realize that you're losing the real thing. You're losing the real deal. You're losing what you really want. And oftentimes your true value is being usurped or leached or taken out of you. It's like a psychic vampirism. So you have to be very careful and get that restored. On the book that I'm working on, I call that, resensitizing yourself. You need to get back to really healing your senses. Excuse me, I have kind of like a hay fever. And your senses, meaning it's to understand that when you are engaged in hyperarousal, all of your senses are affected. And your senses feed your thoughts, your senses feed your dreams, your senses feed your feelings. And so realize the power or the impact of yourself, that you have the ability to dial these back down and restore yourself. It will get better, the hyperarousal. But you have to be very careful, because it's like a wound that can become reignited. So you need to become very skilled at resensitizing yourself, and we'll go into more of this. But realize that it's very important for you to detach, unengage, not pursue, suspend judgment, come to a complete sense of indifference and neutrality and safety, and just allow that be feeling, and cultivate it for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, and begin to recultivate it and rememorize and rehearse it again and again and again, just like a stretch movement. Instead of rehearsing and rememorizing the agitation, rehearse and rememorize the calm and the relaxation and the content. In other words, if coffee leads to overconsumption, for this, is if that's a trigger, realize that this agitation leads to self-deprecation and self-demoralization or what have you, and keeping you further away from your goal. So you have to reconnect, and get some cognitive reframing going on, and some new neural connections, and some new meaning that you're deriving out of this, because oftentimes it's the meaning that you're deriving out of it that's either keeping you in that constant I need to cope mechanism, and you're always coping, because that won't be living a life, that will be coping a life. Or realize, that agitation is not leading you, in the right direction. It's not taking you in the right direction. It's not ultimately going to give you what you want. Look down that path, where it's headed. Is that the path that you want to be on? Dear future me, what would you like me to do today? How would you like me to feel right now? Dear future me, what should I do right now? How would you like me to feel right now? What would you like me to admit to myself? What secrets do I need to come clean with? What little thing do I need to admit? Even a little something. Maybe something good. Maybe that you're right. Maybe you do need to calm down. Maybe you do need to understand that things went too far. Maybe you do need to understand what too far is, and understand that there are boundaries and standards, and that this is what the psychopath will transcend. They will blow past boundaries. It is a violation energy. This is what they do. And this gets people hyper aroused. Be very careful. Understand that this is part of it, and you need to come down from that and come to a neutral place, and understand how that you can engage that and cultivate in that in yourself, as well as in the thought of them or in the presence of them. It's going to become a very important skill. It's going to be a very important feeling. And it's something that, that you need to understand, that you are always going to be a step ahead. You will be. You will understand that. But you have to come into the clearing first. This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. And I hope that these videos do help. Please share, please subscribe, and please donate for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. Peace out, peace in. Have a beautiful day.